I received a really good question about body metaphor work, so I'm going to go ahead and read that. When you begin resolving and symptoms feel less intense, what do you do when new symptoms are raised? Do you keep talking to your inner child about what they feel is being raised, or do you stop to list the symptoms, and then do you look at the symptoms with the inner child to look at what else is being raised? Okay, so what they're describing is they're feeling certain symptoms in their body. They're stopping to do body metaphor work. They're listing their symptoms, as I've taught you, and then they are finding the metaphor, and then they understand, okay, this is the way that God is speaking to me in my body regarding my spiritual dilemma, what's going on, what he's calling me in to address. Then you do the inner child work on that. So you don't just stop with body metaphor work and think you're done. Insight is not healing. Insight is only insight. Okay, so he wants me to do something. You know, if your parent tells you, go clean the dishes, and you're like, okay, I know that I need to clean the dishes, but you don't do it, you haven't fulfilled anything. You got to do your personal accountability work, and then you got to go to him and ask him, have I done this correctly? So personal accountability work, I go and do the dishes. Then I go to my parent and I ask them, okay, I've done this. Will you check my work and let me know if there's anything that you want me to teach, that you want to teach me? I know, what child has ever done that? I'm just using an example, okay? When you're doing your personal accountability work, what you're doing in inner child and inner parent is you are working within personal relationship to process through what's going on there. How do you feel about this, thing that God is calling you into? How do you feel about this metaphor that he's raising inside of you? Is there any resistance? Are there any unresolved wounds that need to be healed through? How do you feel about obeying what he's telling you to do? Is there anything that you need to clear away? Is there any sin or sinful desires? Sometimes it's not even sin, you guys. Sometimes it's like, God is calling you into something and he's calling you into to circumcise even more or to bring yourself lower. And it isn't necessarily something like you kind of have a resistance, like, that's hard though. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be able to sort through that. You aren't a robot. You don't just go and obey and then everything's good. You are being changed inside by God. And so that's the work that you're doing here. So the question is, let's say that you have done the body metaphor work and you have identified the metaphor. Now you're doing inner child work and you're processing through that and new symptoms are arising. The first thing that you need to understand is these new symptoms that are arising. So you have some that are resolving, and listen, that's testifying. God is testifying to you, by the way, when he's resolving your symptoms, that what is being manifest in the physical or in the mental is coming from the spiritual, is coming from what he's calling you into, is coming from that dilemma. Sometimes is coming from a spirit if you have been, spurning him along the way. The remedy is always the same: return to God. But in order to bring yourself to him correctly, you got to sort through any of the things that you need to sort through in personal accountability. Otherwise, you're going to go to him in your flesh. You're not going to go to him in your heart and spirit. You're going to go to him with desperation and entitlement. You're not going to go to him with understanding after having examined what's going on inside of you. If new symptoms are rising, you want to pay attention to those symptoms. You want to pause and you want to do more metaphor work on that. What's going on? Eventually, you're probably going to get to the point where you don't even have to necessarily write out the metaphor every single time. Like he's just going to speak it to you right away. But yes, indeed, you want to pause the work for a minute, listen to what God is raising in your body because he's communicating with you, and then go back to the inner child's work. It's always going to have to do, and really this is kind of the miracle of when you're listening, when you're attuning yourself to the design that God has given you and the way he's speaking to you through it. This is a miracle in that work, is that you're going to be doing the work and then something else is going to rise. And what you would have normally thought of as like, man, I just finally my back is feeling better. Now my arm hurts. And those who are totally without understanding are just going to go from doctor and specialist to doctor and specialist, right? Or take medications and try to, and basically reject what God is speaking to them. But when you stop and you realize and understand and believe that God is raising something in you, then you're going to have a totally different posture and attitude. And you're going to approach it with, oh, okay, God's talking. What is he talking to me about now? And the cool thing is that he's going to talk to you about exactly what he's been dealing with you on already. He's giving you a different aspect of it. And when that picture comes together, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, there's no way that I could have made this up. There is absolutely no way that this came from me. You're going to know that it's God. So pay attention, be attuned. And yes, in answer to the question is, do you pause or do you keep going with the inner child? Pause for a moment. I mean, you're still bringing your inner child. You can say, hey, let's pay attention to what's going on right now. What is it that I'm feeling? Then you list the symptoms and you're constantly, so there's not like a template, like you're just linearly going through the work. All of the skills that I've been teaching you, inner child, metaphor work, looking at the dreams, you might be doing the inner child work and a memory pops up. Okay, now attend to the memory. Don't start compartmentalizing. It's all God speaking to you. He is raising all of these things. Okay, so you're doing the work and then God starts speaking to you by the Holy Spirit. Stop, listen to him, listen to what he's saying. And then you go back and do your work. This is a fluid relationship with the design he's given you, with your creator. You don't need to compartmentalize or do it in a linear way. Listen to what he's raising in you. That's the most important thing. And if you know that all of this is coming from him, then you're not saying, oh, right now I'm listening to my body, but I'm separated from the Holy Spirit. No, you know that in listening to your body, in listening to the design he's given you, you're listening to the Holy Spirit and the way that he's speaking. Because as you learned in Job 33, God is always speaking in one way now and in another way at another time. We just haven't perceived it. So what you're being brought into now is learning how to perceive the many ways that God speaks. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.